Now, from Darwin's Evolutions Publishing, Cry Unto Heaven, a short story by Darwin A. Gedison, narrated by Lord Rexworth. Lightning skipped across the face of dark, scudding clouds. Below that aerial chaos, the desperate flight of Rena Iku flashed in and out of view within the wreckage of the old Carver City spaceport. The blasted remnants of doomed ships and smashed hangars narrowed into a rough alley of twisted girders and shattered concrete. Her footing slipped and dipped between wet, oily asphalt and hidden potholes as she charged into the gaping maw of wreckage. Heedless to warnings of pain coming from her abused ankles, Rena ran full tilt through the debris toward the vertical gash in the wall of Warehouse 11 and the safety of her emergency bolt hole. The splashes of her pursuer's footfalls from behind left her no time for caution. God, I don't want to die. Get me out of this, and I promise I'll never try to sneak a can of peaches again. A hand appeared out of the darkness to snatch the collar of her beat-up flight jacket. Jagged fingernails clawed at the skin of her neck when the fist clamped down. Gotcha! Her pursuer yanked backwards at her jacket and attempted to dig in his heels. Rena's feet slipped on the rain-slick pavement, shifting her weight and sending them both down in a splashing, tumbling heap. Something cruelly hard stopped her final slide along the pavement when she smashed into it with the crown of her head. Stars danced in the darkness before her eyes in agony left her writhing in the water and screaming out in animal misery at the pain. "Over here! I got her!" The man's triumphant shout turned to a squeal of agony when Rena flipped on her back and kicked out. The grip on her jacket disappeared. With the restraint gone, she rolled back onto her stomach to resume her escape through the crack in 11's wall. When she surged up to run, though, the world spun around her. She fell back to the ground with a splash. Gah! Her stomach clenched and hurled bile out into the rain, leaving her nose and throat burning. Desperate to escape, she tried to get up again, but a sudden weight crashed across her back, flattening her against the petroleum reek of the pavement. "Kick me in the balls, will ya?" the voice growled in her ear. "I'll give you a lesson you ain't never going to forget, gutter snipe." Rena clawed at the rain-slick alley, trying to pull away, despite how the world seemed to have turned to sand. Hot, copper-scented blood flowed down her face from her scalp, fouling her vision and redoubling her nausea. Panic overwhelmed her, and she screamed into the night. "No! Somebody help me! God help me!" Splashing footfalls, a woman's cries of pain, a man's words of triumph, then more pain, more anger. Words of supplication cast into the night by a terrified female voice. The dream that held Zeke frayed and drifted away. From the part of his mind that occupied the present, the smells of fresh rain and ozone's metallic twang twisted inside the damp chill that permeated his body. Something had changed. The physical could be denied, but not his fate. The lilac dream memory scent of Tabby's striped hair faded along with the echoed warmth of her body. Driven by his conditioning and unable to cling to his sleeping refuge, he felt himself falling back into the waking nightmare world he had helped to create and longed to leave behind. Rena felt her captor shift his weight to her legs, then his thick fingers wrapped round her belt and pulled her pants down below her butt. "Shut up! No one's going to hear you, you little piece of—" I heard her. The rhythm of the rain seemed to pause for an instant after the deep voice cut through the night. Rena, still unable to drag herself forward, pulled back a hand to wipe her eyes clear. The figure that flowed into the alley could only be vaguely discerned from the surrounding darkness, but it was tall and ominous, and home to a rumbling voice that spoke clearly into the night. "Get off. I won't tell you twice." Perhaps shock froze the man's weight across her legs. In any case, this new figure wasted no more words. Booted feet slapped down, and water sprayed across Rena's body from her head to her bare bottom. She felt a rush of air when the figure flowed by, and the oppressive weight of her tormentor vanished with its passing. Her ears rang in time with her heartbeat, so loudly that she almost missed the sound of choked agony behind her. Then a flash of crimson light illuminated the whole alley for an eye-searing instant. What happened?" Her questioning words came out garbled by a tongue suddenly too thick to use. Crawling stars danced around the edges of a dark round tunnel. Distant footsteps splashed closer through the far-off rain. The warmth of gentle fingers moved to restore her pants to their proper place before easing her onto her back. At that point, Rena's awareness detached from the body that was gathered up from the ground and wrapped within a warm space. The distant brush of fabric cascaded against her cheek, while the clear, musky scent of a man surrounded her. "I'm flying." The sparkling tunnel closed off, taking the rain, cold, and pain with it. Zeke sat in the corner of a relatively undamaged office, holding the wounded girl in his lap. His oversized drifter's coat draped across them both like a blanket. Despite all the years of his rebellion, the act of breaching core protocols still tore at him. His original mission should have been all, no matter that he had set the parameters himself. The young woman had not voiced a proper supplication, only a spur-of-the-moment cry for mercy. Even now, fallen as he was beyond their touch, he could still imagine the voices of the progenitors denouncing his flagrant self-will to the gathered host. And yet, wasn't that the very reason he had gone to war? The girl lay too still in his arms. Her lethargy frightened him. The thought that he might have arrived too late heightened that fear. Had his stopgap treatment failed? That he was a tool of fate he had no doubt, but to appear when called and fail to change the outcome made no sense. A chill ran through him, and he shook his head violently against the thought. "No," he whispered into the darkness, his grip tightening on the girl. "It will all come right in the end. Nothing that happens is by chance." He leaned back and began to hum the tune that Verza had taught him so very long ago. The lilting lullaby she created from the depths of her soul for rocking the creche babies to sleep. The memory of her tears on that day they left the creche for the shuttles remained bright in his memory. Tabby had held her all the way down to the surface. Gentle Verza, loving Tabby, both nestled beneath Zeke's drifter's coat, while their tears flowed, and the flames of re-entry burned outside the shuttle's viewports. Rena awoke with a start, then sat bolt upright when the panic and fear of the previous night reappeared like an avalanche in her mind. A pool of brilliant sunlight illuminated an anonymous bed and office. The light cast stark morning shadows through the windows and tinged the water-stained walls and mildewed ceiling panels in eye-stabbing yellow. Before she could properly gain her bearings, though, her head gave a single enormous throb that sent her flopping back down with a moan. Oh, crap. She groaned, then did her best to curl into an invisible ball. The pain cascaded from the top of her head all the way to the bottom of her feet, doing unspeakable things to her stomach and bowels along the way. Miserable, she retched time and time again, bringing up nothing but more pain. "Damn," said a familiar deep voice from across the room. Rena turned her head toward the sound and squinted against the glare. The shape of a man coalesced out of the light to kneel down beside her. For someone so tall and broad, his movements seemed disconcertingly smooth. Fine fingers stretched out to touch her temple, cooled against her skin. "A fever, then," he muttered before he brushed sweat from her forehead with a blue kerchief. His elegant face was framed by long, light brown hair that fell forward as he bent over her. She looked up into his bottomless blue-green eyes and retched. The burning on her cheeks came as almost as much of a shock as his worried smile. "Why in the hell am I blushing?" she wondered as he gently rearranged her on some sort of blanket. "I should be too sick to be embarrassed." "You took a nasty knock to your head," his rumbling voice assured her as he turned to dig through a worn knapsack. "You're actually quite lucky to be feeling anything at all." Rena noticed that when he spoke, his words seemed to vibrate inside her, damping down the pain and easing her nausea. Or was it just relief that she did not have to suffer alone? "Uh-huh." He produced a clear bottle of water and a small vial of pills from the pack. "Part of your problem," he continued as he twisted off the bottle cap, "is dehydration." She began to answer, but her voice seemed to trip inside her throat. After swallowing, she tried again. I won't be able to keep it down." "Oh? Well, I might be able to help with that." Again he leaned forward to touch her temples with his fingers. This time a warmth flowed from the softness of the contact and melted into her head. The heartbeat throb of agony dulled and faded with each pulse until nothing more than a nagging tension remained. "How—" His right index finger pressed against her lips as he gave a slight shake of his head. "Just a bit of tech that's far more rare than it should be." He reached to the side to recover the bottle of water and handed it to her. "Here, drink up. The pain will return after a while, but if we start the medicine now, hopefully it won't be as bad as before." She sat up to sip from the bottle, and he opened the vial of pills, shook out 2, and handed them to her. "What are these for?" The suspicion in her voice brought a chuckle from her strange benefactor. "An anti-inflammatory analgesic combined with limited-duration broadband regen nanites. With this, the concussion and the cut on your scalp should be healed in a day or 2. Her eyes widened as she stared at the 2 luminously blue pills. "Medicine? Real medicine? For me?" "Of course. Or would you rather I let nature take its course so you can be nauseous and miserable for the next week or so?" Rena closed her eyes against a sudden and unwanted burning sensation, then clenched her fist around the precious pills and bowed her head. Despite her best efforts, tears broke free to roll down her nose and drop on her hand, scorching her inside and out as they traveled. "But—" Her voice cracked in the face of emotion she had not let herself feel for so long. She lifted the clenched hand to her nose and eyes, rubbing away the burn while fighting back the urge to sob. "I'm a nobody. You don't... You can't even... My name. You don't know my name. I don't know your name." He reached forward to wrap his hands gently around her fist. With subtle pressure, he guided her fingers to open and picked one of the 2 pills from her palm. She watched the graceful fingertips as they rose to place the medicine between her lips, her gaze moving up to his eyes when it came too close to see. Simple and common as his motions were, she still felt entranced, her attention captured by some magical being that had appeared before her to dance in the sunlight. When the rim of the water bottle appeared before her lips, she started slightly before accepting the drink. "My name," he said in a voice just above a whisper before offering her a second pill, "is Zeke." After she had washed it down, Rena nodded to him. Rena Iku." Zeke turned his head at a slight angle, as if considering her response, then closed his eyes and bowed his head solemnly. Then his eyes opened, a twinkling mischief replacing the earlier worry. "When you cry unto heaven, Rena, you should be prepared for God to answer." Zeke watched through the office window as pinks of sunset faded in favor of the deep blue of the coming night. Behind him, Rena's steady breathing helped calm his nerves. He had not failed, though it had been a near thing. They had spoken little that morning before the medicine, and her weakened state had sent her back into the arms of sleep. At least he'd gotten some peaches into her first, although her wry laughter at the sight of the can still puzzled him. Is grief all that we brought to these people? The brief tale she'd shared of her loss and flight reminded him once again that he was far from the only person to suffer at the hands of the progenitors. "This world is dying," he muttered into the gathering darkness. Tabby had said as much the first time they had landed. She had always been the best at fitting together the evidence and making the proper intuitive leap. One glance around the decaying spaceport the day they landed was all it had taken. Zeke wondered what she would have made of the canny refugee teen hiding amongst the rival gangs that had inhabited the shell of this dead city. A smile curved the corners of his mouth. Tabby would have liked her, he was sure of it. She would have adopted Rena instantly as a little sister and co-conspirator extraordinaire. As if Tabby's little practical jokes had not been bad enough with just her, the two of them together. My, now that was something to truly give a man pause. Together. If Rena had been with Tabby, would Marco have been able to... No. Zeke clenched his hands into fists and forced his mind onto more rational paths. Tabby was gone, and Rena would never meet her. The past was the past, and immutable. He had done his part for this young woman who appeared to be all of 18 years old. Now it was time to move on, to get back to the business that had brought him to this place. Zeke pulled the transponder from his pocket and checked the glowing phosphors again. The dot had come far closer. Soon he would have to change the scale to show the planetary orbital map and the landing path that Marco would take. He closed his eyes, turned back to the window, and slipped the tracker back into his pocket to wait for the prayer. Every night around this time, she began, a soft cry of sincere supplication cast upon the zephyrs of the night that even Marco could not ignore. Her innocent voice called out for salvation and justice in the midst of chaos, with all the power that pure childlike faith could put behind it. None of Zeke's kind could resist such a lure. "Dear God, please help me. My sister is being hurt again. Please help me save her, to get her out of this place. Have mercy on us. God, I don't understand. Bad things happen, I know, but please help me help my sister. Give me the strength I need to save her." Such a powerful prayer, he whispered into the night. "And I will answer it, young one, but not before it draws Marco to me. Forgive me, but I will set things right soon. I promise to be there soon." "Soon," muttered Rena in her sleep behind him, startling Zeke into turning around. What did she hear? A brief flash of panic swept across his mind, but the girl's eyes did not open. Instead, she made an indistinct noise, sighed, and rolled onto her opposite side beneath the blanket of his worn coat. The tension of surprise eased from his shoulders as he stepped across the room to kneel beside her. Reaching out, he brushed a strand of her ragged black hair from her closed eyes. What little light remained in the office left her face a pale smudge in the darkness. Despite how she had been forced to live, her scent remained wholesome, especially after he had washed the blood from her hair and closed the gash in her scalp. "I don't understand, Tabby," he whispered, his fingers straying through Rena's hair. "I know I'll have to leave this one tomorrow. Why does that bother me so much? She isn't you." Without warning, Rena turned her face into Zeke's hand. Her skin cooled to his touch. "What you saying, Zeke?" she mumbled sleepily. "Something wrong?" "Nothing's wrong, Rena," he answered softly after swallowing back his surprise. "Just checking. Your fever's broken." "Shouldn't talk yourself. It's not healthy." She curled into a tighter ball beneath his coat. "Cold." "Come here, then." He sat with his back to the wall, and then lifted Rena onto his lap, rearranging the garment to cover them both. He expected her to protest his familiarity, but instead she nestled into his embrace, nuzzling the pocket of his right shoulder with her cheek. "Warm," she muttered. "Soft." He turned his face away from hers, away from such distracting temptation. Her slender hand appeared on his chin and brought him back, a faint glimmer marking where the night had turned her dark brown eyes black. "Thank you, Zeke." The hand pressed harder against his chin as a kiss landed against his cheek. "You're an angel." His body went stiff with shock. Then reason returned, and with it, his ability to give a self-deprecating chuckle. A colloquialism, that was all. She could not know. No one could know. With his own hands, he had exterminated the truth. "Silly," he chided her softly. "You still need to sleep." "Okay." She dropped her hand down to his shirt and squeezed him tightly. "Don't let me go." "Of course not." her answering sigh of relief brought a smile to his face. Soon Versa's lullaby drifted up from his memory, and he found himself humming it from deep within his chest. Rena's breathing slowed to blend within the rhythm, coupling with Zeke's music to drift across the night, and accompanied by a frightened child's prayer that only he and Marco could hear. In her dream, Rena found herself back 10 years and 1,000 miles to the farm near Emmington. Oddly, she had retained her current age, and Zeke was there in his oversized drifter's coat. His feathery hair drifted across his face while the last warm breezes of the season played around them. They laughed together and lugged bushels of peaches back up to the cold house, where her dad and brother were busy feeding the automated sorting line, right where she expected them to be. The sky was the clear purple blue that so often accompanied early autumn in their little corner of Felham's World. The familiar smells of wood smoke and home cooking surrounded the central buildings of the homestead. She turned to look at Zeke when he started to say something and felt her heart jump into her throat. Beyond Zeke's twinkling eyes, a silver thread hung in the sky. She drew breath to scream, but try as she might, nothing came out. Zeke kept talking, the birds kept singing, but it was all going to end again just like it had before. Every beat of her heart pounded against her throat as she tried to lift her arms toward Zeke, his smile completely ignorant of the glittering tunnel cutting through the sky toward the little city in the valley behind him. Already she could feel the heat from the infrared pulse warming her face, but no one else seemed to care. Her mother stepped onto the porch of the summer kitchen and raised the wrought-iron clapper to ring the dinner triangles she kept hanging from the eave. Zeke jabbered away at her, but the words made no sense. Why couldn't she move? When you cry unto heaven, Rena, you should be prepared for God to answer. "Kinetics!" she screamed, her voice echoing back from the empty office surrounding her. The juxtaposition of her dream world over the dreary room left her befuddled for a moment, while nightmare sweat dripped from her hair, face, and body. The lingering image of dream Zeke fell on top of a startled real Zeke, who appeared to have been caught halfway through the door with his dark brown drifter's coat, floppy cloth jungle hat, and a bulging camouflage knapsack. Rena blinked and glanced about. She was still on his bedroll blanket, but tins of processed meat and fruit sat next to her scuffed boots and folded leather jacket. The warm covering of his coat had been replaced with a faded green canvas dropcloth of undefined origin. An overwhelming sense of betrayal surged up from the pit of her stomach and threatened to suffocate her. You are leaving me." She could hear the hurt leaking into her words, but she could not hold it back. After all she had been through, she had promised herself she would never expect anything from anyone. Maybe Zeke had surprised her that way. But expecting more was stupid. Stupid! Still, she had expected more. Of him. And now he was going to leave her. Her mind could not accept that the tortured sobbing escaping from her lips could be hers any more than the tears that suddenly filled her eyes. She didn't cry. Not any more. Never again. She had promised herself never again. A warmth appeared by her side, followed by the now familiar feel of his arms as they wrapped round her, drawing her into his embrace. An illogical rage boiled up inside, causing her to ball up her fists and beat on his back with every ounce of energy she could muster, even as her sobs grew worse and the tears soaked his shirt. You damned insensitive asshole! She howled while her fist flailed against him. Don't you be so nice, and just leave me here. I'll never forgive you if you leave me like this. Rena. Never. Don't you ever leave me. You said you wouldn't let go of me. Please, Zeke, please hold on to me. I can hold you too. I can. Let me stay by your side, please. Her attack against his back slackened until, her rage ebbing away, she grabbed him and pulled her face into his chest, crying every tear she had held inside since the death of Emmington. I barely know him. Why do I want this so badly? Gentle fingers drifted through her sweat-soaked hair, carefully avoiding the tender spot where her scalp had been so recently gashed. The soothing motion wiped away the ache in her heart. Slowly her fear subsided, taking her tears with it. He began, then stopped, pausing to clear his throat. I'm not sure you should stay with me, Rena. The path I'm on will end soon, and it could take me with it. I'd never forgive myself if you were hurt as well. Rena pulled her arms back and placed her hands against his chest, pushing partially, but not completely, cleared of his embrace. She kept her head lowered, her eyes fixated on the little V in the base of his throat. You sound like you expect to die, she said softly. Maybe. I don't know. Rena lifted her head to look into his beguiling eyes and saw doubt reflected in them for the first time. But you don't want me to get hurt. Resolve replaced doubt. That's right. More than anything else in a long time. Rena nodded, her own commitment hardening. She lifted her hands to either side of his face and drew him down, kissing him firmly on the lips. Then, while he was still surprised, she thrust her tongue out and swelled it inside his mouth. She opened her eyes and had to giggle at the shocked expression she saw in his face. There, she announced as she pulled back to look him in the eye. Now some of me is inside you, so you damned well better start thinking about staying alive, or else you'll kill a part of me, too. Zeke lifted his right hand to his lips, thunderstruck. Rena. His voice had gone almost breathless compared to his normal baritone. She laughed at his confusion and threw her arms around his neck, his arms reflexively wrapping around her. Just for good measure, she said right before licking the left side of his face from chin to ear. Hey, he protested as he tried to pull back, but Rena allowed him just enough slack to look him in the eyes again and grab his chin with her left hand. That's my mark. You're mine now, so get used to me being round. No more of this sneaking off while I'm sleeping crap. Life's too short on this planet for that. His right eyebrow twitched upward as a bemused smile twitched at the corner of his lips. Not giving me any choice, eh? Rena felt a broad smile spread across her own face. No way. You don't know anything about me. She pulled her right hand back between them, wrapping her fingers into the shirt over his heart. Call it a hunch, but I think I already know your soul. Anything else? You can tell me when you're ready. With that said, she pulled him into their second kiss. This time, he willingly shared her gift. What the hell is wrong with me? Zeke wondered. He trumped along behind Rena as they followed the old monorail siding away from the ruins of Carver City. Along the horizon he could see the first hints of the distant peaks of the Arley Range. Rather than plodding in alongside him in the gravel, Rena chose to balance on the remaining fragments of the composite maglev track in front of him. Until that morning in the office, he felt he had never really let himself truly see her. Now, every time he looked up, his heart tripped over itself when he recognized a beauty and vitality curiously untouched by the world that had sought to destroy them both. Her small, handmade canvas backpack bulged with the cans of food they had recovered from her cache before leaving town. Stuffed under the flap were a variety of wild food plants she had gathered along the way while they put distance between themselves and the gangs that squabbled over the remnants of tech left in the rubble. From straps below, the pack dangled a rabbit and the machine pistol she had used to shoot it. Somehow, even with all of that wobbling weight, she managed to never lose her balance, deftly putting her slim feet down on the rail one after another. The wonder of her performance set Zeke to chuckling. Rena stopped and turned back toward him with a mischievous glint in her eye. Bending at the waist to better align her face with his, she lifted a questioning eyebrow. What are you laughing at? Better not be me or I won't cook for you. Zeke tilted his hat back and smiled at her. I'm not laughing at anything. Watching you just makes me happy, that's all. It's a nice feeling. She shoved her lips to the right and gave every appearance of carefully considering his answer. Then a broad smile lit her face. Well, that's okay then. With that she hopped down, wrapped her hands through his arm, and urged him back to walking. So, how far is it now? She asked. Didn't you just ask that not 10 minutes ago? No. Oh, no, that's a lie. Rena's only reply was a giggle. Zeke rolled his eyes. Fine, you minx. We're at least 30 clicks from where we need to be. We really have to be there tonight? Yes, we absolutely have to be there. Okay. Her calm statement of acceptance faded away behind the sounds of buzzing summer insects and gusts of wind blowing across the seemingly endless sea of grass through which they walked. Every so often, Rena would squeeze his arm or rub her face against his shoulder, as if to confirm that he was still there. Each time she did, a little jolt of joy would cause his heart to leap. Tabby, is it wrong that it doesn't seem to hurt as much anymore? Hey, wake up. Rena could feel something poking her in the back. Hadn't she just fallen asleep a minute ago? She blinked wearily, rubbed her eyes, and then rolled over to face under Zeke's warm chest. "Couple of minutes," she groaned. A soft kiss brushed her forehead. "You're the hardest person to wake up, you know that? Come on, open your eyes. There's something you need to see." He shifted behind her, rearranging his legs as he sat up. His movements pulled the coat away from the ground, allowing the night chill to sweep over her. "Ugh," she protested, grabbing at the hem of the garment and trying to pull it back down. "Christ, it's cold, you maniac!" "Less bitching, more wakey-wakey." His hands appeared under her arms, guiding her into sitting between his legs with her back against his chest, before casting the coat over them both again. "And don't you dare doze off. You really need to see this." Rena took a moment to grind her palms against her sleep-encrusted eyes before shaking out her hair and yawning. "What are you on about, Zeke?" His arm stretched out to the right of her head to point to the western horizon. "Just look where I'm pointing." She followed the direction of his finger, blinked several times to clear away the blur left from rubbing her eyes, and saw absolutely nothing but stars. "Zeke," she started to say with a roll of her eyes. "Just a few more seconds, Rena, I promise. Keep your eyes on the sky." An annoyed huff blew past her lips. She looked back where he still pointed. Then in a section of the sky close to the end of his fingertip, dozens of new stars flared to life, danced, died, and were reborn. What the merry hell? More transient stars emerged and died, some bright, others dim, but all coming to life and dying in seconds instead of eons. Without warning, their lesser brilliance disappeared within an enormous white ball that fled almost blinding incandescence in its tiny slice of the sky. The more elderly members of the night sky vanished for several seconds while this rank upstart usurped the heavenly stage. Then it was gone, collapsing through the spectrum to leave Rena's retinas burned with an image of its passing. Zeke's voice, low and soft, tickled her ear. Thus end the dreams of the progenitors, and with them the nightmare that held this world. "Well, what did I just see?" Rena answered, her eyes still fixed where the youthful stars had danced. "The fall of the heaven." "What?" she exclaimed, her hands tightening on his arms. His chuckle tickled her ear. "Yes, without her master she became easy prey. A fleet dispatched from the 3 nearest colonies has finally taken down the last of the progenitor ships. The war on this planet is almost over. A war I've been waiting 10 years to finish." His arms tightened around her for a moment, then he started getting up. Rena scrambled to rise as well. When her eyes recovered their night vision, the starlight allowed her to watch him walk across to his knapsack. He pulled out 2 objects and slipped them into the pockets of his coat. From another of the many pockets of his coat, he produced a small box and peered intently at a display screen that glowed green in the night. "Ah, he's almost here. Good." She stepped up next to him and glanced at the device. "Who?" "My brother, Marco." "So, is that good or bad?" Zeke snorted and put the device back into a pocket before glancing back up at the night sky. Rena glanced up too, but as soon as she did, he sighed and started walking out of their little camp. After several steps, he stopped and turned back toward her with his right hand outstretched. "Weren't you the one who was going on about sneaking off and staying by my side?" "Oh!" She started to run to him, but stopped as a sudden thought hit her. Darting back to her pack, she grabbed a pistol, then hurried back to his side. She claimed his hand, pulling it over her shoulder to nestle beneath his arm. Chuckling, Zeke led her into the night. After several minutes of quiet, he cleared his throat. About a click and a half away is a tavern, or what passes for one anymore. Inside are 2 girls. One has been sold as a sex toy to the highest bidder every night. The younger has been worked damn near to death in the kitchens, but she still prays every night for God to give her the strength to save her sister. Who told you all this? The one who prays. I can hear her. So can Marco. By delaying my response to her supplication, I finally managed to lure him off the heaven. A horrible chill of realization ran through Rena's body, from her ears to her feet, locking her legs in place. Her sudden stop jerked Zeke to a halt next to her. He turned toward her with one eyebrow raised, inviting her to comment. The mild expression on her face that she had so come to love poured icy apprehension into the pit of her stomach. She swallowed and tried to force her mind and mouth to begin working together again. You're one of the fallen. By the time she had gotten to the last word of her query, her voice had tightened to a squeak in the darkness. She felt a tenseness come and go in the arm that rested across her shoulders, but the only outward sign he gave was a sigh of resignation. We don't call ourselves fallen, but yes, I am. He let his arm drop. I was on the first contact team, which you call the first wave. The initial contact that started this farce. But the first wave was completely destroyed in the riots. Is that what you were going to say? Rena nodded numbly and turned away, somehow embarrassed to admit her thought. There were 3 survivors. Marco fled to the heaven after the judgment ceremony and led the second wave invasion. I and my sister Verza escaped to the mountains when news of the riots reached us at a remote refugee camp. The rest of the team did indeed die at the hands of an outraged city. Zeke turned and put both hands on her shoulders. She did not want to look him in the eye, afraid of what she would see. However, the gentle touch of his fingertips on her chin left no choice, and she raised her face toward his. His expression held no anger, just concern, and a lingering tightness that hinted at an old pain. Do you still truly feel that you know my soul, Rena? Her eyes closed and she hesitated. The tips of his fingers on her chin burned in comparison to the cool of the night. Do I know his soul? How long had she blamed the fallen for the wars and strife that had ravaged her world? They were supposed to be merciless, engineered killing tools of the progenitors who rained down death from the sky and butchered on the ground, not gentle healers with deep voices, warm hands, and soft eyes. She brought her fingers up to cover his where they lingered on her shoulder, and reached around his waist with her other hand. The image of his worried smile twinned with his happy laughter from earlier. Gentle. Kind. Her lips tingled at the memory of their kiss from that morning, before he agreed to let her be with him. He may be fallen, she thought as she pulled herself tightly against Zeke's chest, but he's not what I expected that to be. Yes. I know your soul. I trust you to do what's right. His arms enveloped her, holding her close. After a moment, he loosened his grip and kissed her forehead. Then we have to run. Huh? Breaking that embrace, Zeke grabbed her left hand and pulled her into a loping trot. We've got to get to those girls before Marco arrives, and we're almost out of time. They dashed through the darkness together, stumbling over tufts of grass and hidden sticks. After the first few yards, Rena dropped Zeke's hand to pump her arms as she followed him. Go on, she shouted to him as he started to slow. I'm right behind you. Get the girls. There'll be ground cars at the tavern. Find the one with the most fuel. He called back before breaking into a full sprint that soon left her far behind. By the time she finally crested a low hill to catch sight of the shabby tavern, Zeke had been out of her sight for several heart-pounding, lung-burning, and stub-toe minutes. More than a dozen ground cars surrounded the ramshackle collection of cast-off building materials. Loud music and garish red lights filled the hollow in the low hills that hosted the odd gathering place. A thread of fear shot through Rena that perhaps Zeke had gotten misdirected or captured, but then she saw the billowing shadow of his coat when he ran from the shadows into the pool of light surrounding the building. 2 flickering discs of blue light adorned his wrists as he charged in, the after-image of their glow burning cynic curves of light against the night. 10 meters from the entrance, Zeke planted his feet and launched into the air, his coat trailing behind like a pair of dark wings. He twisted mid-flight and hit the entrance squarely with both feet. The door exploded inward from the impact. Zeke rebounded from the impact and flipped so that he landed facing the now gaping opening. The music had stopped instantly, along with any other noise except the echo of the door's destruction in the hollow. His voice echoed faintly back to her, and she caught the words, "Behold!" and "Judgment," before he charged in. Brilliant red light began flashing inside of the tavern. Several seconds later, she managed to shake off her bemusement. "Oh crap, I'm late!" She charged down the hill toward the ground cars. When she closed with the vehicles, she heard gunfire, shouting and screaming. Glancing up, she noticed that the noise was tapering off, and the flashes of light had tapered off. She turned away from what might or might not be happening inside the building, and instead focused on powering up the cells in each of the ad hoc vehicles to check the fuel meters. "Renna!" called Zeke, after she found a four-seater with an almost full pressure bottle. She looked up and spotted him jogging out of the building with a girl-shaped bundle of rags in his arms, followed by another much smaller child who stumbled along in his wake. Flames licked the eaves of the building, replacing the earlier electric glow with flickering primal light. She jumped out of the driver's seat and sprinted toward him the moment her feet hit the ground. When she reached the trio, Zeke shoved his burden into her arms. "Here, take these two back to the car and wait." A wheezy breath and the vague scent of blood confirmed that one of the girls was inside the bundle of rags, but the weight in Renna's arms was frighteningly light. "Wait? For what?" "For me to finish my business with Marco. He's finally arrived." Zeke watched Renna convey his two latest charges toward a battered-looking ground car. Part of his heart relaxed. He knew he could count on Renna should something go wrong. She would help the two. They might even find Versa's haven without him, if it came to that. He turned away from the fleeing trio, passed his right hand before his eyes, and bowed his head. "Lord of hosts, accept these children, known as Su-Chi and Danelle, into my care." "The forms are ill-suited to heretic lips." Zeke looked up toward the darkness beyond the burning tavern. A pall of wood smoke blew across the scrub brush and gravel that formed the apron before the building. When the vaporous curtain had passed, two figures stood at the edge of the light, one much smaller than the other. Both were clothed in helmetless white environment suits, although the shorter also wore a face-obscuring white cloak and hood that billowed in the night breeze. He offered them a slight bow, never taking his eyes from his brother's shadowed face. Heresy is a convenient word for fanatics. Although the flickering light made black pits of Marco's eyes, he thought he could see a narrowing, whether of consideration or anger he could not tell. Zeke realized that either was good enough for his purposes, leading him to chuckle into the night. "So, Marco, heaven has fallen. What now for the sword of a dead and disgraced theology?" The smile that curved his brother's lips took Zeke by surprise, but not as much as the mocking laughter that followed it. "Theology? Is that what you think this is about? I've been free of that idiotic progenitor yoke for a decade now." "Excuse me? This from the man who led the second wave? I killed most of those poor bastards. I know all too well how hard they fought for the greater glory of the progenitor's paradise." Marco flipped his right hand airily. "Growth-accelerated pawns who would believe whatever I told them once the creche moved beneath my hand. The heaven was mine from the day I returned. It was also the last day that any of the progenitors ever saw." The irony of it all suddenly seemed too much. What started as a chuckle became a full-on belly laugh. After a few moments, Marco's own deep laughter joined in, their shared merriment twisting with the smoke in the wind. You mean," Zeke gasped out at last, "that the progenitor war was actually Marco's war all along?" His brother's laughter cut off abruptly. "It didn't have to be a war. Nor would it have been, except for a single ground-to-space kinetic shot after we bombarded Emmington, eh? You know that one, don't you, Ezekiel? The hit that destroyed our star drive and the eugenics tanks with a single traitorous blow." Zeke's amusement evaporated as well, his ironic smile slipping into one of ice-cold adamantine. That was a good day. Still left me with almost a brigade of second-wave angels to kill, though. "So much hate, brother. She was only one woman. How easily you surrendered your ordained path of greatness amongst the host." Zeke spat to his right. "Oh, you want to imply your own divinity now, is that it? Is that how you justify judging Tabby in the center of a major city after we were specifically instructed to not perform rites of any kind during first contact? Besides, who ordained what? The progenitors or you, Marco? You're still just a man, no matter how much technology or DNA manipulation you sport. The only fate I know of in this universe responds to a much higher power than any conceit of man." Marco's hand strayed to the shoulder of the small figure beside him. "The original Tabby had been blinded by your heresy. Had you two not broken protocol and married, she might still be alive today. I couldn't abide that betrayal. I did what had to be done, as I have always done." Zeke's fingers slipped to the twin devices on his wrists. Blue fire erupted into domed fluorescence that covered either arm. "You killed Tabby because of jealousy, you hypocrite. Worse, you aggravated a contained civil war in a sick gambit to set yourself up as some sort of savior god king. Don't try to hide behind some curtain of sanctimonious bullshit. I'm not stupid enough to listen to your lies." "And so we come to the crux," Marco said with a disconcerting note of satisfaction in his voice. "Well, I'll have you know that I'm not going to even resist you." "The hell?" snapped Zeke as he came to a fighting crouch. "No, really. Instead, I brought along the sole survivor of your little kinetic parting gift to Heaven's eugenics section to stand as my champion against you." His hand drifted up to the hood of the figure and pulled. The cloak fell away, and a mane of long striped hair came free to blow in the wind. Images cascaded through Zeke's memory at the sight of those strands moving in the flickering firelight. He could remember tussling with those colors around him when they played on the park deck. He could remember breathing their scent when he had curled up next to them after the first time they had made love. The same colors, the same texture, the same shape as that which had floated above a pair of crystal blue eyes full of worry on that last day when he left with Verza to visit a refugee camp and perform the will of the progenitors. The same eyes that now looked at him from across the apron, only filled with hate instead of love. Oh my God. No. Please, no. Blue fire snapped to life on her right wrist just as it had on both of Zeke's only moments before. "Oh, come now, Ezekiel," Marco taunted as her arm raised and aimed. "She's not very practiced with judgment bucklers as yet. She might even miss completely. Not to mention that her guard is no good. An experienced angel killer such as yourself should have no problem with her, right?" "Marco!" Zeke bellowed. "Mad as you are, even you know that this isn't her. You can't bring the dead back to life." "Of course not," his brother agreed with a cold smile. "My pet here, my dear Tabitha, is ever so much more enjoyable than Tabby could have ever been. She loves me first, you see. I am the center of her all. There's no room for you in her heart or in her world, heretic. There never will be." The buckler on Tabitha's arm flared red. Zeke jerked his left wrist up just in time to absorb the blast of phased plasma that shot through the darkness. Heat washed over him while the blue of his shield damper wrestled with the hungry cerulean of her attack. "Damn you, Marco!" he yelled as he brought up his right wrist to aim. Just before he could shift that buckler from shield to weapon mode, though, Marco slipped behind Tabitha. "Careful," he chortled back as he dodged back and forth in her shadow. "With the heaven vaporized, there's no saving any hint of her ever again." Tabitha shifted left, Marco trailing in her wake. Zeke brought his wrists together to form a V-shield and sprinted right. "Oh, come on," Marco called. "If you're just going to dodge, you might as well lay down your bucklers and let her judge you. Your accumulators will overload before her emitter does." "Bastard." Zeke snarled silently as he crossed behind a shipping flat of rusted parts. How can I get the drop on him? Looking up to the figures of Tabitha and Marco as they passed before the blaze, a sudden chill of realization ran through his guts. Dear God, no! Renna! He cried and he reversed his direction. The two were heading directly for the cluster of ground cars where she had taken the girls. Damn, damn, damn! One hostage was not enough for Marco. He wanted all of the chips so that he could force Zeke to surrender without a real fight. Ah! A hungry beam of power scorched the ground before him. Zeke dove across the finger of heat that would have clung to him just like any other man and vaporized his cells instantly. Rolling out from his dive, he brought his shields up instinctively to catch Tabitha's next shot square. "Oh, you are good," Marco noted appreciatively, "but you're a little slow on the uptake." Laughing, he turned toward the parked vehicles. A staccato snarl filled the hollow, and Marco's head snapped backwards. The rear of his head exploded in a cloudy mist of blood, bone, and brains, to splash all over and around Tabitha. Even while his body was toppling, a slight figure in a leather jacket with ragged black hair charged out of the night, eyes bright with the flames of the tavern and a machine pistol in hand. Stunned by the sudden shower of gore that had seemingly appeared from nowhere, Tabitha never saw the blow that Renna delivered to the back of her head with a still smoking gun. Zeke stood up and staggered toward them, shaken by the sudden ferocity of Renna's attack. When he neared the two, he could see Renna breathing hard, sweat pouring down her face, while she stared at the motionless Tabitha. She gasped as she came closer. "Did I kill her? I couldn't hold back. I just couldn't." Zeke bent down and removed Tabitha's buckler, taking a moment to toss it into the burning building before lifting the girl's head on his fingertips. He closed his eyes and focused on letting his embedded diagnostic scan the girl's head. "No, but she does have a nasty concussion." "Oh," Renna said with a sigh of relief. "That's all right then. Wasn't her fault, really." From the corner of his eye, he saw her legs started to wobble. Zeke jumped up and caught her shuddering body right as her knees buckled. Renna's eyes glittered wide in the night. She took a deep breath and let it out through her teeth. After several additional breaths, her shaking abated, and she looked up at him. He watched her raise her right hand toward his face, then jerked back in surprise when she flicked him in the forehead with her middle finger. "Ouch!" He rubbed at the offended spot with his left hand while still supporting her with his right and glared at her. "What the hell was that for?" "To get your attention. You forgot your own advice, you know." Zeke shook his head, puzzled at the shift. "What advice?" Renna's answering smile twinkled in the firelight. "You practically screamed at the big guy for help, dipwit. I would have heard it even if I hadn't been sneaking up to watch. Come on, think a little. If he cared enough to answer me, why wouldn't he pay attention to his own angel?" He stared at her until the first chuckle escaped his lips. After that, all he was able to do was laugh, even after she pulled his head down and kissed him. "I wish you two would stay a while longer. The children have already gotten used to you." Renna glanced up at Verza. She still had trouble believing how beautiful her new sister-in-law was, with her long flaxen hair and fine features that were so like Zeke's. The longing in her words tempted her. Renna really would not have minded staying a few more days. After all, Verza's haven had been her original goal. Still, Zeke had been emphatic. "I know," he admitted as he cinched up his rucksack after stuffing the last of Verza's homemade trail mix. "But Tabitha will be waking up soon. I'm convinced it's better if Renna and I aren't around when she does." Despite the early morning sun, Renna shivered. The concussion that Zeke had diagnosed at the tavern turned out to be a subdural hematoma. By the time they got to Verza's refugee commune in the high valleys, Tabitha almost slipped away before they could get her unloaded and carried into the orphanage infirmary. Fortunately, Zeke's sister seemed to have a much better healing capacity than he did. She had been able to repair the damage and put the clone girl into a medically induced healing coma for the past week. "Besides," he said as he stood up and slung his pack across his shoulders, "there are a lot more people out there who need someone to help them get this world straightened out. The 3 colonies fleet can't fix everything by itself now, can it?" "No, I suppose not," Verza admitted with a sigh. "It's just... I do get lonely. We're the last now, you and me." He stepped forward to hug her. "It's time to move on. People need a different kind of angel. We will be back, Verza. I promise. From here on in, this world will stop dying and start living. You'll see." With that, he gave her a kiss on the forehead and started walking down the gravel drive toward the waiting ground car. Renna turned to follow, but a warm hand appeared on her shoulder, holding her back. She looked back and up into Verza's 2 blue eyes and saw the tears hanging in the corners. The angel's slender fingers dropped down to Renna's left hand and lifted it between them. The simple silver band on the younger girl's ring finger glittered in the summer sunshine. Verza raised the hand more and dipped her head to kiss the metal before leaning forward to brush Rena's cheek with her lips. We were created by foolish people who thought they could grab hold of God's grace through their own efforts, she whispered into Rena's ear. They engineered us to defend their faith, answer their prayers, heal their hurts, dole out their punishments, and expected that we would somehow never be touched by their hypocrisy. Yet in the end, we proved to need redemption as much as they did. Or perhaps even more. Pride and arrogance are like that, you know. She leaned back before reaching out to tuck a strand of unruly black hair behind Rena's right ear. Your quick thinking saved an angel's soul, sister. He would have killed Tabitha to protect you and those girls, I'm sure of it, and doing so would have torn him apart, no matter how much you loved him afterwards. Rena clasped her new sister's hands in her own. I won't ever let him fall, Verza. I promise. I'll keep him whole no matter what. Hey, called a deep voice from down the drive. What's the hold-up? You two going to gossip all day? The women grinned at each other for a moment before Rena snatched Verza into a quick hug, then turned to run toward Zeke's outstretched hand. The end. This is Lord Rexworth. We hope you have enjoyed this production of Cry Under Heaven by Darwin A. Gedison. If you enjoyed this narration, you'll be happy to know that Lord Rexworth also streams on Twitch, Kick, Rumble, and YouTube. All links can be found at lordrexworth.com. Please feel free to visit, follow, and subscribe. We look forward to seeing you there. AI theme music created by Sibi using Suno. Thank you for listening to this Darwin's Evolutions Publishing production. Author's note. I have a fundamental distrust of Christian denominations. Denominations are human things, overlays of human organization atop something that is fundamentally beyond human understanding for the most part. They are constructs that are easily corrupted and warped away from God, and examples are plentiful in today's news feeds. Wherever two or more are gathered in my name, there I am also. That is my working definition of a congregation, and also a church. It is not a human bureaucracy overlaid atop something that does not bend to the will of men. It is not something which distorts the relationship between the Lord and his people like a twisted lens. A church is people coming together to try and understand the Word of God and conform to his will as best we broken creatures can. The fact that denominations spring from those attempts is a sad inevitability. Too many times I have seen arbitrary behavioral rules imposed by what essentially amounts to committees of the self-righteous that diverge from any relation to what is good and meaningful on the Word of God. Worse yet, I have a very clear memory of learning that a childhood friend of mine had been consumed by the satanic cataclysm that ended the quote-unquote ministry of Jim Jones in Guyana. I do not in any way, shape, or form trust clergy or the church organizations that spawn them. This is the fundamental core of Cry Under Heaven. It takes no great stretch of imagination to conceive of a denomination of the fully indoctrinated and well-funded to try and buy their way into heaven via creating their own homebrew messengers to God. In fact, that's probably one of the lesser evils that people who have gone off the rails would choose. Blending into this personal antipathy, I have read an article talking about how people who are fervently praying or deeply in meditation have a discernible change in their brainwave patterns. A prayer mode, if you like. If any kind of psi ability is developed in the future, why couldn't it therefore be tuned to hear prayers? What more powerful form of proselytization could there be than actual angels associated with the church in question actually hearing and answering prayers? However, transhumans are still humans. They still love. They still get angry. They still get jealous. Human beings, no matter how they are formed from the dust of the earth, are still human beings in the sight of God. And once they hit the age of accountability, they are damned for being fallen and capable of sinning, just like the rest of us. So, that leads to rebellion and war, and sets the stage for Cry Under Heaven. Embedded in this, of course, is the idea that life and love and hope will eventually survive. The urge to protect will survive. The need for a place to belong endures. The keys are whether or not we can survive until we find what we are looking for, and for companions who would accompany us through the long journey while we are searching. This recording is copyright 2026 by Darwin's Evolutions Publishing. All rights reserved.